So, hello everyone. I am Nathan Pavon. I'm the director of the InfoTech program at UPE, and I welcome all of you to the very first InfoTech workshop of the semester. Let's go here. Be sure to join our Discord at discord.gg/UPEFIU in case you haven't done so already. And I encourage all of you, if you're not members of UPE yet, I encourage you to go to upefiu.io so that you can sign up and also get updates on any events that will happen throughout the semester. Also, another form of getting updates about UPE in general is through our social media. So that is at UPFIU and at FIUSCIS, along with their corresponding hashtags. So I want to start off with what is Linux? So many of you have probably heard about Linux throughout your studies in university, but some of you probably have never really gotten that deep into it. So Linux is basically a family of operating systems that uses the Unix-like Linux kernel. So the Linux kernel is actually what Linux is, and what a kernel is that's basically what makes the operating system actually work, because you can't have an OS without a kernel. So Linux isn't necessarily an OS. It is more specifically referring to the kernel, but if we're talking about Linux as an operating system, I guess we will just refer to it as Linux because that's what everybody's most familiar with. So much of the software and libraries are provided by the GNU project, which is a free and open source software project. And common distributions of Linux, some of which you may be familiar with, include Ubuntu, Debian, and Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So common uses. So Linux is commonly used in servers, mainframes, and supercomputers. That's the majority market share of all operating systems and servers in general. It's also used in mobile devices such as Android OS, that is based off of Linux as well, and is also utilized very heavily on cloud services such as Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, and Microsoft Azure. In addition, you could also use Linux as a desktop OS, and the most commonly used desktop OSs that are Linux-based would be Ubuntu. But if you want to be, if you want to get into more like technical aspects of Linux, you could probably try to use Arch Linux as a desktop OS. However, I don't recommend that for beginners. Ubuntu in particular is actually really good for beginners, but for the purposes of this workshop, we will be using Kali Linux because that's the one I'm most familiar with. So why use it? Well, Linux is free and open source, and what that means is that you can copy, use, and modify it in any way you want. So in terms of operating systems, this one gives you the most freedom in how you can use it. It is often more secure than Windows and Mac OS because Linux in general is audited and contributed to by the open source community, which is many, many people devoting their time for the betterment of the Linux kernel or any Linux distribution you are interested in. So without further ado, we will go over many of the essential terminal commands that will help you actually use the operating system. So directory management. One of the most common commands that you probably will be using is pwd and cd. So pwd stands for print working directory, and the way that that works, you literally just type it into the terminal, and then it will show you the working directory that you're in, the current directory that you're in, basically, the entire path. And cd stands for change directory. So if, for example, you wanted to go back a directory, you do cd ... in the terminal, and if you wanted to go to the home directory, you do cd tilde. So I can demonstrate that real quick. So here, when you have Kali open, on the top left, you want to open the terminal up there. It's that black icon. And with that, let me demonstrate pwd. So when you type it in, it shows that I am in the /home/Kali directory. This is a little small. I might want to increase the size some more so you can actually see. Is that good?
A little more.
A little more. I think it's okay now. Yeah? Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, pwd shows you the current working directory, and cd and specifying a folder takes you to that folder. Now, the tilde, that represents the home folder. So if you're like somewhere in the operating system that you're like somewhere else and you don't want to specify the path to your home folder and you want to quickly go back, you can do cd tilde. And as you've seen before here, I also do cd dot dot. That just means go back a directory. So if I wanted to go back out of the directory I'm currently in, I could do cd dot dot and then I'm there. Question, yep, go ahead. Victoria, you had a question?
Oh, hey, sorry. Yeah, it's probably
Yep.
just easier if I speak it. So I was trying to open up Kali after downloading Oracle, the virtual machine, and everything last night, but Kali didn't come up. So do I have to import it every time through the VirtualBox? Like, how did you open it on your system?
I just imported the OVA file into VirtualBox because you need that. That's the actual virtual machine.
Okay, yeah.
So,
you have to. You want to use it then?
Yeah. You don't have to do it every time. It's just once, and then it's there, and then you can just start it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, like someone just brought this up to me privately. Yeah. Commands and folders are case sensitive. So you can't just do, let's say, let me get out of here, cd home. That won't work because home is actually lowercase. You'd have to do cd home and then you're there. So let's go back to the cd tilde, to the home directory, and let's go back to these slides. So the next command is ls, and this basically lists files and directories in the current directory that you're in. An example of this would be ls-la, and that those letters after the dash are called flags, and flags basically modify the behavior of the command. So ls-la, the L flag formats the output to a list, and the A flag includes files that start with a period. By default, Linux, when you run the ls command, it does not show files or folders that start with a dot because those would be considered hidden. And the L flag just lists it in a format that is much nicer, so I'll demonstrate that. So when you go to the terminal, let me clear. By the way, if you type in clear, you can clear your terminal of any like extraneous information you don't want. So ls by itself, it shows me some stuff here, downloads, template, videos, pictures, a file here as well. ls-l shows it in a list format. So it's much like nicer in the way that it's formatted. And also it shows you extraneous information like the date that it was created, or the date modified rather, the user that it's associated with, the owner, and then some read and write permissions that I will explain later. And if you do ls-la, it would also show you any files and folders that start with a dot, in case that's also something that you're looking for. So typically when I'm listing out files, I always do ls-la, or yeah, just ls-la, so they can see everything that is in the folder that I'm in. So yeah, let's go to the next slide here. And there's two more commands here, directory management, mkdir and rmdir. So these are pretty self-explanatory. Mkdir means make directory. It's used to create directories. So for example, in the terminal, if you wanted to create a directory called my dir, you can type in mkdir space and then my dir. And if you wanted to remove empty directories, you can type in rmdir and then the name of the directory that you want to remove. So the thing is with rmdir is that, like I mentioned before, it only removes empty directories. It will not by default let you remove directories that have things in them. And there's another command that I'll show you that will actually do that better. So let's show that real quick. Make dir, my dir, there you go. Oh, I already have one that exists. Let me remove that. This is the command that I was going to show you later. I'll explain it. So clear my terminal, mkdir, my dir, and when you list out the folders, it shows that that one has been created. And if you want to remove it because it is empty, it will let you rmdir and then the name of the folder or the directory that you want to remove. Now let's list that out, and yep, it's gone. So that works. Let me know if I'm going too fast, by the way. That's been an issue sometimes, where I go a little bit faster than everybody can keep up with. So feel free to stop me whenever you.
Could we go over that one more time from ls-la onwards?
Yeah, ls just lists files and directories. ls-l lists it in a format that shows more information and in a more list format. And ls-la shows you, in addition to what we've just seen, the A flag shows any files and folders that start with a dot. That's pretty much it. And the mkdir, that makes a directory, so you just put that mkdir and then you specify the folder. And if you want to remove a directory, it's rmdir and then the name of the folder that you want to remove. Yep. So here, permissions management. So we just finished with directories management, and now we will begin more ownership of files and just permissions in general. Is this being recorded? Yes, this is being recorded. This will be uploaded on the UPE YouTube channel by tomorrow, probably, but that's not up to me. I just send them the file and then they upload it at their own convenience. But I will post it if you're, yeah, just subscribe to the UPE channel on YouTube. I don't remember the exact link for that, but it will be posted on the UPE Discord somewhere, so you guys can refer back to that later. Okay. So permissions management. So one of the commands that you'll probably be using pretty often is the sudo command. And that basically allows you to execute commands as root, but on a non-root user. So root is analogous to administrator on Windows. You probably are more familiar with that. So some commands require elevated privileges such that it wouldn't let you run it if you're running it as a non-root user. So instead of becoming a root user, you can use this sudo command and just basically run it as root or administrator, essentially. So an example of that would be sudo apt update. I will explain what apt update is later on. That's just a package manager, but that's just an example. Sudo could be used on many other commands as well. So I'll show that real quick. So sudo, and then whatever command you want to run as root or administrator, update. And it's going to ask you the password for Kali. And if you guys manage to log in to Kali, you probably already know the password. It will be Kali. And you press enter. And so it will just run that command. I will explain what the command is doing later on, but this is just an example. And I'm not going to let that run the whole way. So if there's a command that's just running and you want to kill it, you can hold Control and press C, and that force stops any commands that are running that you don't want to continue. So let me clear that terminal. Okay. Next, there is chown. This changes the owner of a file or a directory. So let's create an empty file with touch myfile.txt. I will explain what touch is later. It's like the kind of command that you can create like empty files really quick. So if you were to type touch and you would just specify the file name, it would create an empty file really quickly for you. So yeah, create an empty file called myfile.txt with this command, and change ownership to your username. So the way that you do that is that you would type chown, and then after that you would type in the username that you want to change the ownership of the file to, and then you specify the file afterwards. So I will demonstrate that. So I will, hold up, I probably already have a file, myfile.txt here. I do, let me get rid of that. So you guys probably don't have it, but I do because I ran through this earlier today. So to create an empty file, you would do touch myfile.txt. That will create an empty myfile.txt. And you would, what I was going to show you is chown. This will change the ownership of the file specified to the username that you specify. So let's say I want to change the ownership of this file to Cali. It could be another username on this machine, but right now, since the only user we have is Cali, so that's what we're going to be using. So chown Cali, and then the name of the file that you want to change the ownership of. And that's basically it for that. Is the Arduino workshop from yesterday available too? I'm not sure. I wasn't there for that workshop. That's UPE Make. I would ask the UPE Make director if you can find him online. That would be Charles. He's the one that manages that. So let's continue. I showed you chown, and now I showed you chmod. So chmod means it just changes the permissions of a file. So the general structure of chmod is that the first number sets the permissions for the user, the second for the group, so like a group of users, and the third for everyone else, or the third could be others, basically. So if you were to use this command chmod and then put these numbers in and then the file that you want to change the permissions of, it would be chmod 777 and then like the file that you want to change the permissions of. These numbers would basically grant full permissions to read, write, and execute for the user, the group, and for everybody else. So let's recap that. First number is for the user, second is for the group, and third is for everyone else. It goes from, I don't remember the range of numbers. I think it's probably like 0 to 7. But I don't generally like using the numbers because it's not that clear. There's another way that you can do this exact same command without using those numbers. So that was the example that I showed you, chmod 777 myfile.txt. The same can be done with the following. chmod user equals read, write, execute, comma, group equals read, write, execute, comma, others equals read, write, execute. So it's longer. So some people might not like that, but it's much more descriptive and easier to memorize when you're actually changing permissions of several files. So I'll demonstrate that to you real quick. So right now we have, I'm gonna do, oh, well, not LSLA, let's just do LSL because that's too many files. Right now we have a myfile.txt, and you can see the permissions that that file has in this line right next to it. So it has read, write for the user, no execute. It has read for the user group, and it has read for everybody else. Now what I want to do is have read, write, execute for user, group, and others. And I will show you that. So chmod u equals read, write, execute, g equals read, write, execute, and then others equals read, write, execute, and then I specify the file that I want to change the permissions of. When I press enter, that should do it. Let's see. And yep, read, write, execute for all of 3 of those groups went through perfectly fine. Yep. So let me clear my terminal and continue on. This is file management. Yeah. So there's a command called file, and you're probably going to be using that when you run into a file that you're not actually sure what type of file it is, and you're not even sure like how to open it. So we're familiar with like Windows, where every file has an extension at the end. So .txt, pretty obvious to us. It's a text file, but sometimes you run into files that you're not even sure what they are because they don't have an extension. So if you want to identify the type of data that the file contains, you could type file and then the name of the file that you want to identify. Let's see. The next one is touch. I showed you guys that one. Typically, touch is used to change the timestamp of a file, but it's more commonly used to just create a new empty file. So like I have demonstrated before, if you type in touch and then myfile.txt, that will create an empty file of that name. So I can show you that. I think earlier we already have a myfile.txt. And if I type in file myfile.txt, it will tell me that it is empty because it is empty. It's not really a text file because there's nothing in it. It's not sure what it is, so it's like, oh, it's empty. That's perfectly fine. That's kind of what I expected. So let's see, let's try file and then specify a directory like desktop. And this will tell me instantly that it is a directory. Okay, clear that terminal out. Someone just privately messaged me, so I found out if you use LL instead of LSL, it does the same. Really? Ah, I never knew that. So yeah, that's new information. LL does the exact same thing as LSL, so that's a little bit faster to type than just ls-l. So yeah, that does the exact same thing. I never knew that. That's interesting. Cool. I'll be using that from now on. All right. So remove. You'll be using this often. This basically removes and deletes files. It cannot remove directories by default though. So the general format of the remove command is rm, and then you just specify the file. But here I'm showing you how to delete directories because by default they cannot remove directories. So if you were to type rm and then the name of the directory and press enter, it's probably not going to let you delete it if it has stuff in it. So the R flag basically stands for recursive. So recursive means that it just deletes everything within the thing and then anything within it, as within any folders below it as well. So if you wanted to delete a directory that had stuff in it, you would type rm-r and then the name of the directory, obviously without the brackets. This is just a general format. And if you wanted to force delete a file, because sometimes there's a file that won't let you delete it, probably because it's maybe in use by another program. So if you wanted to force delete that file, you would type rm-f and then the name of the file. So I'll show you an example. So let's create a directory similar to the one we had before, mkdir, and then my dir. And then type rm-rf, my dir, and it will delete that directory. Now, since there's nothing in it, it's not necessary to use this command. You could probably just use rmdir like I showed you before to remove it. But if typically directories have things in them, so you're more often going to be using rm-rf to remove directories. The F, and reminder, R stands for recursive, so that's typically used to remove directories that have things in them. And F is force, so it just force deletes a file or directory, just in case it's probably being used by another program. Yeah. I guess I'll demonstrate that real quick. So let's see, we already have, okay, so our previous exercise removed that. So mkdir, my dir, so that created that directory, and you can delete it with rmrf myfile.txt, or not myfile.txt, my directory, sorry, because I want to delete the directory, not the file. And that will remove it. Now, when you're using rmrf, be very careful of what you're deleting, because this will delete it without any confirmation, any warning, and there's no recycle bin. It's just gone. So be sure that you know what you're deleting, and don't accidentally delete like the root folder, for example. You don't want that. Otherwise, your OS will not boot in the next time around. Okay, so file management. So CP, which means copy, it just copies a file to the destination directory. So let's use that by making a new directory again, and then copying the myfile.txt that we made earlier to the directory that we want to put it into. So I'll demonstrate that to you guys. Make directory, my dir. Here we go, the directory is there. And so I want to move this myfile.txt to that directory. The way that I would do that, well, not move, it's copy, rather. Move is a different command. I want to copy it over, because if I moved it, then it would be gone from here, and it would just be inside there. So if I wanted to copy it in there, I would do cp, I specify the name of the file, and then I specify the directory, and then I also include the file name that I want to change it to, because it gives it the option to change the name of the file. Like I can change the name of the file to new file.txt. So if this moves it over, it will change that to new file.txt, but the contents are the same. But since I want to keep the name the same, I'll just repeat the name of the file and just do my file.txt. That's typically what you'd be doing when you're copying things over. So let's check. So it's still here because we just copied it over. So let's cd into my dir and then list. And here we go. It shows myfile.txt is in cd my dir. So let's go back to the home directory, because that's where we'll be doing the rest of the workshop. I don't want to be doing everything in my dir. All right. And like I mentioned before, I confused CP with MV. Move is the one that actually moves files. So basically, it's like copy, but instead of copying it over, it deletes the original and just moves it to the destination that you specify. So an example of this would be mv myfile.txt mydir/myfile.txt. And that would just move it over, and it would also remove the original. Like cut, yeah, it's like cut in Windows essentially, but in the terminal environment. It can also be used to rename files. So let's demonstrate this. So let's say we want to move myfile.txt to the directory that we want. So in our example would be my dir. And then keep the name the same. So when we ls, myfile.txt is gone. So that's pretty much the behavior that we expected since we moved it over. Now, since that's gone, I also want to demonstrate that you can also use the mv command to rename files. So technically what it's doing is actually moving the file to the same directory you're in this case I'm talking about, and just renaming the file. So let's first, since we already moved the file over, myfile.txt, we're going to want to recreate it for this demonstration purposes. So let's do touch myfile.txt just to check it is there. Good, good, good. And then if I wanted to rename myfile.txt, I can do mv myfile.txt and call it new file.txt. And since I didn't specify directory, it's just going to do it within the same directory. Now, if we do ls, we will see that it has been renamed to new file.txt. So let's clear this terminal. We will continue on. Oh, now we're here to the manual pages. Now, you're going to be probably using this a lot. Manual is used to view the manual of a command or utility. So let's say there was a command or tool in the Linux distribution that you're in that you're not familiar with or you don't actually know how to use. So the example that I provide here is MSF console. That's the Metasploit framework, which is used in pen testing. So I will demonstrate this. So man, whatever utility you want, I'm just using MSF console as an example. And it will show you the manual page with all the details of this particular utility. Gives you the name, synopsis, description, options, and even tells you flags and commands that you can use in conjunction with it. And you can navigate up and down with the arrow keys. And if you wanted to quit out of the page, you can just type Q, and that will exit out of the manual page. Okay, now we're going to get into input-output redirection. So I'm going to show overwriting of files. So the arrow is typically used in between two commands. And what that basically does, this particular arrow that points to the right, it redirects the command to a file or overwrites the existing file. So what that means is that it's getting the output of the command on the left side and putting it into a file on the right side. So the example that I show here is IPADDR, which just shows the IP address. And then it will, the output of that will be put into a file named myfile.txt. I see someone has a question. Daniel?
Yes, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
For the manual,
yep.
Is it a manual for a specific command or like a manual for all the commands?
Let me go back.
The command prompt.
Yeah, manual could be used on almost any command. So you would use it like in conjunction with, you would type in man, and then you would type in the command that you want to find the manual page for. So let's say, for example, you don't know how the apt package manager works, and you want to know how to use it. You would type in man space and then apt, and then that will show you the manual page for the apt command.
Okay, can I use the manual for like any of the commands you just listed, like a copy or?
Well, some of them don't actually have manual pages, which is weird. Like for example, if I type man and CD, it shows no manual entry for CD, which sucks, because what if you don't know, what if there's some stuff about CD that you don't know about, that you want to learn about? But usually they do have manual pages for everything. So usually it's like stuff that is more complicated, but CD is a really simple command. So you probably wouldn't really need a manual page for that. But yeah, let's see. Right. Actually, man ls. ls actually has a manual page. So that's cool, because there's a lot of things that you can actually do with ls that I didn't mention. If I mentioned everything you could do with everything, this would go over like 10 hours. I'm not going to do that. I'm just showing you guys the essential commands that you'll most likely be using when you're actually using the operating system. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So where was I? Yeah. This arrow redirects the output of the command on the left side to a file on the right side. And conversely, the arrow pointing to the left redirects input of like a file to the command on the left side. You probably won't be using that one as often. You'll probably be using the one on top more often. So let me demonstrate that for you guys. So the example that I showed is using a command called IP address. And what that basically just shows you some like the network interfaces on your machine. I'll get into more detail of what that is about later on. Let me clear. So what if I wanted to output that what we just saw into a file? The way that I would do that is I would specify the command that I obviously want to use. I would use the right arrow, and then I would specify the file that I want to put it into. So as you can see, running it did not output anything onto the console or the terminal because we decided that we wanted to put it into the myfile.txt. So it's in there. I'll show you guys how to look through files. Well, actually, I could show you right now. So let's say, for example, you wanted to put you wanted to feed a file as input to a command on the left side. You could do cat, for example. This is just an example command. Cat just prints stuff to the screen, and then specify the file that you want to feed into that, and then it would just print it out. Now you don't have to do this for cat. Cat works just fine without the arrow because that's what it's basically for. But that's just an example. There are some commands that require you to feed in like a file as input to it. So that's like in those cases you would be using the left arrow. Okay, so appending. Appending is similar, but it's more so for adding onto a file, like adding output to a file, because like I didn't mention it before. Let me go back. This right arrow has the potential, if you have like a file that already exists, it will overwrite it. And sometimes you don't want that to happen. And if you don't want that to happen, you want to append to the file instead of overwriting it entirely. So this redirects output of a command to a file, and it appends instead of overwriting. So for example, similar to what I've shown before, IPADDR, and then the two arrows, myfile.txt. So let's do that. IPADDR, append to myfile.txt. And if we cat myfile.txt, it shows the information twice. Let's see, that's the first part. That's the second part, just to show that it appended it to it. It just shows it twice because we already ran a IP address command to output to myfile.txt earlier. So let me clear my terminal here. And here is piping. So piping basically, trying to use a good word instead of, I put pipe in the slide, but it just takes the output of the command on the left side and inserts it as input to the command on the right side. Typically, piping is used in conjunction with some commands that format the output in a way that you specify. So let's say, for example, I ran ls and I wanted to pipe that output to a tool called grep. Grep lets you search texts and files by line. And I wanted to only output files that contain .txt in them. I'll show you more about grep later on. So ls shows us all this information, but what if I don't want that? What if I just want files that start with or contain .txt, like these two? I would do ls. I'll pipe this output that we have here into grep, and then in quotations I type in what I want to search for or to output specifically. When I press enter, it shows in red. It shows the exact match, but it also includes the whole line. So here, this is exactly the kind of output that we were expecting. I just wanted to see the txt files in the output of the ls command. So clear that. And here is viewing file contents. And the way that you do that it's several ways. So I'll show you a few of the commands in which you can actually do that. So head is one of the commands that lets you do this. It prints the first 10 lines of a file. And if you wanted to specify the amount of lines that you want to print out, you can do -n and then specify the number. And then you specify the file after that. So let's say, for example, you wanted to see the first 5 lines of myfile.txt. I'll show you that real quick. So you would do head -n because you want to specify the number. I want to see the first 5 lines of myfile.txt, and it would only show me the first 5 lines as expected. Now, another thing that you can do is also pipe, like we mentioned before, you can pipe output of certain commands to a command on the right hand side. So you can also use head as well. So let's say I wanted to pipe the output of lsla to head, because let's say, for example, only wanted to see the first 10 lines of this output. 0 to 5. No, there's no limit. I don't think there's a limit. So you can, what was the question? I guess some line is too long to be displayed. There's 6 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is strange. It should only be the first 5 lines. I'm not sure why there's 6 lines. Usually that's not the case. Oh, 0 through 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, there's no particular limit. You can do -n23, -n50, things like that. So like I was saying, if I wanted to pipe the output of lsla to head, I can do that. And by default, it would show me the first 10 lines of the list command. And there we go. There's more files, but since I only wanted the first 10 without, because by default head will only show you the first 10, it shows me the first 10 lines as output. So before, it's possible that this command that I ran before, it's probably wrapping around. So let me see if by extending the terminal, it will fix that. Maybe, not sure. We'll see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's exactly the problem. It's because it was wrapping around. So it does show the first 5 lines of the file that you specify on the right-hand side. It's just that it was wrapping around because my terminal was a little small. Let me expand it a little bit. There we go. Okay. So we'll continue. Another command, tail. It prints the last 10 lines of a file by default. But you can also, like before, specify the amount of lines that you want to specify. So tail-n5 myfile.txt will show you the last 5 lines of myfile.txt. And if I, for example, wanted to pipe that the output of a command to tail, I can do that as well. Like for example, ls-la, I want to only see the last 5 lines of that output, or not last 5 lines because I didn't specify the n here. So by default, it's the last 10 lines. And that's the output that you would get, the last 10 lines of the command on the left-hand side. And I mentioned this before, cat just displays file contents. So it's as simple as typing cat myfile.txt, or that's the example that I showed. Obviously, it could be any file. If you do cat and a file, it would output the contents of that file. So if I do cat myfile.txt, it shows me all of this information that it's contained in myfile.txt. So you're probably going to use cat quite a bit just to quickly output file onto the terminal environment. Now there's another command called less. This is used to view contents of files as well. However, it's better than just using cat, because with cat, it outputs everything onto the terminal screen. And sometimes you don't want that because in some Linux environments, there's no scrolling. Like for example, if I do cat myfile.txt here, like I can scroll up and see what's on the top. But in a lot of environments, you can't actually do that. Like terminal only environments in particular. I mean, more commonly, you'll probably be using a desktop environment if you're just learning how to use Linux in general. But servers like AWS, if I were to make a virtual machine in Amazon Web Services, it's going to be a terminal only environment. And that's possible that there won't be any scroll bar on the right side. So let's say I wanted to output the contents of a file, but also make it such that I can scroll like up and down without the scroll bar, of course. So let's see. We go back to the slide here. The way that I would do that, I would specify the command on the left side that I want to pipe to the command on the right side, being less. And that would give me the ability to scroll with my arrow keys. So it allows you to go forward and backward, one window with F and B. So if you wanted to go forward a page, you can do that. And if you want to go backward a page, you can also do that. And like I mentioned before, you can go up and down line by line with the arrow keys. And you can also type H for a list of shortcuts. Yeah, most Linux users run a headless environment, meaning no GUI, everything's with commands. Yeah, a lot of Linux environments would consist of just the terminal, no GUI. So you're going to be using the less command quite a bit when you're outputting, when you want to view contents of a file. What type of projects do you intend to work on that you have all of this and more memorized? Projects? This is mostly for like systems administration. Like information technology would most likely be using Linux quite frequently if they're managing a Linux server, which most companies do use. They do use Linux servers. So in terms of development projects like software, I'm not sure, but let's say, for example, you're doing DevOps. So that would be like a kind of integration between IT operations and software development. You're going to be deploying your software somewhere. So you're going to want to ensure that works in a Linux environment, for example, because chances are that's where you're going to be developing like a web app, for example. You're going to be hosting it on Ubuntu probably, or Debian, whichever you choose. So it would be handy in those circumstances to actually get familiar with the Linux environment if you yourself are the one who is deploying your server or your web app. Or you can have someone else do that for you, but I'm more in favor of you guys getting familiar with a little bit of everything so you can be well-rounded individuals, of course. And also Linux is used very heavily in security. So if you guys are interested in cybersecurity for that matter, you're going to be using Linux for sure. Yeah, in my cyber classes, we're using terminal pretty much. No, yeah, that's pretty much cybersecurity, dude. If you're going to want to get very familiar with the Linux environment for that. Let's continue. So Linux tools. So here are some various tools that you'll be using in the Linux environment. So find would be pretty common if you wanted to find a file. So the general structure of the find command is you would specify the command find. You would specify the location you want to look into. You want to specify the criteria, and on the right side, you want to specify the search term. So an example would be find.-name, and then let's say I want to specify that I want to find files that end in .txt. This asterisk here just is called a wildcard. And what that means is that it's not concerned with any of like matching with anything on the left side in this case. it is only concerned with matching this format at the end here. So if I did star.txt, it would only search for files.
Hey, come on, Sky. Come on. Let's go.
Hello? Okay. So yeah, it would only search for files that end in .txt. And another example, so you can also specify the depth in which you want to search. So by default, it will search through the current folder and any and all folders that are below your current folder. Sometimes you don't want that. Let's say you just want to search within the directory that you're in and no deeper than that. You can specify the depth with the -max depth command. And so the example here I show is that I just want to do a depth of 1, which means I just search into the folder that I'm in and no deeper than that. And that basically does that, yeah. And we can also pipe the output to grep as well. So let's say I wanted to find inside of the current directory and below any files that end in .txt. I would pipe that out to grep, and I can specify the particular text.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I can also specify like the what was it? Let's say I wanted to find files that end in .txt that pertain to Firefox. I will show you that real quick. Okay, so I'll show you guys real quick with how that works. So find, and then the dot basically means the current directory. And let's say I want to find files with a particular name format. And I wanted to find files that end in .txt. I would do that in this manner. When I press enter, it shows me several matches here. New file.txt, my file.txt, some Firefox stuff, and another my file.txt. I can also specify the depth in which I want to search. Let's say I only want to search a maximum depth of 1, which means I only just want to search within the current directory that I'm in. I can do that as well. And see, it only shows 2 results because those are the only 2 txt files that are in the current directory. Now let's say I wanted to search files that match or end in .txt in the current directory and below, but I also want to filter the results such that only lines that contain the term Firefox are shown. I can do that by piping the output of the command on the left side to the command on the right side. And here we go. It shows us exactly what we expected. So before, when we didn't specify any filters, it would show us everything that ends in .txt. And now that we did specify the filters, it only shows us lines that match with the Firefox word. Okay. So SSH, this is pretty simple. You probably know what SSH is, but you're probably never used it in a terminal environment. It is used to connect to an SSH server on a remote machine. So let's say, for example, you want to connect to the Ocelot server at FIU. The way that you do that is by typing SSH, your username. I put my username, but if you want to use your username, don't try to log into my account. And then to specify the exact server, and then the server on the right side. So the server for Ocelot at FIU is ocelot.aul.fiu.edu, and I can show you that. So I want to SSH into Ocelot with my particular username at ocelot.aul.fiu.edu. And then it will prompt you for the password. Obviously, you're going to use your username. Don't use mine. And then you're logged in. So that's one way you can connect to the servers at FIU if you wanted to do so. Typically, I think they have you use PuTTY, and that it does the same exact thing, but it abstracts away the actual running of like commands and such. So I want to log out of here. Just type log out to log out. Let me clear my terminal. And here is a tar command. So tar basically places files and directories in .tar archives, kind of like zip, but by default, tar doesn't compress it. It just puts it into an archive. The zips that you're familiar with, not only they put it into archives, but it also compresses them. But here, tar just puts it into an archive. So the general format of a tar command would be tar, specify the options, and then you specify the directories or the files that you want to put into this particular archive. So for example, tar zcf, these are the options, archive.tar, and then mydir, puts mydir, the directory, into an archive called archive.tar. So the C flag up here specifies that you want to create an archive. The F flag basically tells tar to use an archive file, so archive.tar. And the Z flag tells tar to compress it as well with gzip, which is an external tool that tar utilizes for compression. So I'll show you that real quick. So let's say I wanted to compress the mydir directory into a tar archive. Oh, I already have one here, actually. Let me remove that. Okay. Okay, yeah. So let's say I wanted to put this into an archive.tar file, or a tar file, rather. So you do tar zcf. This compresses it. The Z file, yeah, Z compresses it. C puts it into an archive, and this specifies that you want to use an archive file. So here I would specify the name of the tar file that I want to create, and here I would specify the directory I want to put into the tar file, or the file, either or. And then when I do that, it successfully creates an archive.tar file. Do you happen to have a cheat sheet of the commands and brief info on them based on the presentation? I do not. However, I can provide you with the slides after if you want, so you can look back at it without having to watch a whole video. Yeah. So let me clear out my terminal. In addition to that, tar can also extract files as well, or decompress them if you specify that you want to decompress them. So the way that you do that is with tar zxf. The V just specifies that you want more, verbose output, so it's just more wordy. The V is not necessary, but I like including it so I can see what files have been untarred, essentially, or removed from the tar archive. So the example I show here is tar zxvf archive.tar. So the X flag specifies you want to extract. The V flag specifies you want verbose output. The F flag specifies you're using an archive file, which we are here. And the Z flag specifies you want to uncompress with gzip. Gzip compresses, and gzip can also uncompress. So I'll demonstrate that. So we have the archive.tar file before, and if I wanted to decompress that, I can do zxvf. Those individual flags I've mentioned what they did before. And so it showed me that it removed, or rather it got this directory and this file within that directory. So when we check, it shows that this is the case here. Yeah. So that's the output that it, well, actually, yeah, the directory here is what we've taken out, not this file. We've already had that previously. But yeah, that's what that does. Let me clear. And so I showed you a bit about grep earlier, but this goes into a little more in depth about grep. So what grep does is that it searches for instances of a particular match and it prints out those lines. So the example that I show here, grep, comma or apostrophe inet, and then myfile.txt. What that does is that it looks into the myfile.txt file and it only shows me, it only outputs the lines which have this match in it, this word inet. So I'll show you that. So recall that myfile.txt has all this output. If I only wanted lines that began with inet or that contained inet, I could use grep to do that. So let's do grep, specify the word we want to match, and then specify the file, myfile.txt. And that shows us any file, I mean, any line in the file that matches with inet. Now, it's also matching inet 6, and sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you only want to match whole words. And the way that you would do that is through using the W flag. This searches whole words. The I flag makes it case insensitive in case you don't want, because by default it's case sensitive. So if you specify I, it's case insensitive. And the N flag prints the line number as in addition to the line itself. So let me demonstrate that. So let's do grep dash W for whole words, I for not case sensitive, and then what was the other one? N that specifies the line number. Yep. inet myfile.txt, and this would show us whole words. It will only match whole words, so it omits the inet 6 lines here, and then it shows us the lines as well. What if you specify inet with a space at the end? Spaces are counted in the match as well, but if you're, well, actually, I'm not sure. Let's see, because if I specified whole words, yeah, if you put a space at the end and you have this W flag, it's not going to match it. But let's say if I remove the W flag. I see. So yeah, if you have the W flag on, it's not going to work if you have a space in the match that you're looking for. Yeah. Okay. So let's continue. Oh, there's some other flags in grep that you can use. The -B flag specifies the amount of lines that you want to print before a match. The -A specify the amount of lines after the match. And -C is basically the amount of lines before and after match. So it's like pretty easy to memorize. B before, A after, and C is for context. So lines before and after. So let's say, for example, I wanted to find like 3 lines. If I wanted to print out 3 lines before and after any matches that contain inet in the myfile.txt file, I can do that. And it would, well, it ends up printing everything actually because inet is everywhere. Not too good of an example, but let's say I only wanted to do 1 line before and after. So that's a little better. So here, inet before and after it prints as well, not just the line itself. Same thing for inet 6, before and after, before and after, and so on. So yeah. And another thing you can do with grep, there's some other flags here. So if you do grep-lr and you specify the text that you're searching for, and then you put in that directory, this is just basically specifying the current directory. It will recursively search in that directory that you specify. So it will search within the directory, and it will search in any directories below it. The L flag only shows files that contain a match. So by default, grep would show you the lines that were matched in terms of text. But if you're only looking for the files that contain a match, you can include the L flag, because sometimes that's what you're looking for. So let's say, for example, I'm looking for just files that contain a particular match. I want to search recursively. Let's say I only wanted to, I guess, INET as an example. And then let's see what else here. And then you want to specify the directory that you want to search into. So in this example, I want to search the current directory. And it's probably going to do that for a long time because it's searching through everything. Yeah. Okay, so cool. It showed me that it found a myfile.txt because it contains instances of the term INET. And it also showed me this path that I wasn't expecting, blocklist.xml, that contained this word that I'm looking for. Yeah. Echo is another command. It repeats text typed back onto the screen. This is more useful for when you're making bash scripts. So let's say, for example, you're creating a script that automates like a bunch of commands, and you want to, print out to the user that this particular operation has completed. You would do echo, and then you would specify the text that you want to print out. But a simple example would be echo hello world, and that just prints back hello world onto the screen. Like I said, it's not very useful to just say hello world in the terminal. Like, what's the point? In bash scripts, you would be using it, because if you're automating tasks, you want to print out to the user that this task has been completed. And you can do that by including echo and then the text that you want inside of your bash script. So another tool, clear. This clears the screen. I've showed you this many times before. And date. This shows the current date and time. So when you're using Linux in a headless environment where there's like no GUI or anything like that, or you're not going to be able to see like the time and date. Like here in Kali, you can, because this has a whole desktop environment, whole graphical user interface and the like. But if you're in a terminal-only environment, you would be typing in date, and this would print out the date. And in addition, it would also print out the time and the time zone as well. So yeah. You can also clear the terminal by using Control-L. Yep. You can also, you can just use Control-L as well in addition to clear. Either or is fine. Control-L is probably faster though. So Control-C, that force stops an operation on the terminal. Anytime you're running a command and you want to force exit the command because it's taking up your terminal space, you can just hold Control and press C. So here we get into networking utilities. So IP, this shows the IP addresses and network interfaces on your system. And ifconfig does basically the same thing. So I'll show you that. So let's say IP address. This shows me the IP address for this and other information for this particular interface. So LO is the loopback interface, basically 127.0.0.1, and Ethernet 0 has this particular local IP. Now, ifconfig also does this similarly, but you have to run it as sudo because otherwise it won't run on its own. Type in Kali, and it shows you a similar output. So here's one network interface, here's another network interface. Shows you the IP for each as well, in addition to other information as well. So you can use either or, but IP address color codes everything, so it's a little bit nicer. And ifconfig just formats it a little differently. So clear. Another command, nslookup. This basically retrieves information about a specified domain. So nslookup google.com will just retrieve this information. I'll show you. It basically just retrieves like DNS information. So this is the DNS server that's running locally on our machine that it's actually querying with this command. And this would also give you the DNS server of Google that gives, this actually might be the IP address of Google, not the DNS server. Let me verify that real quick. Let's see. If I go to that IP address, it should take me to Google. It does, it does. So yeah. So this nslookup just gives you some information about the particular domain. Typically, it's just DNS information. So this is the IP address of google.com that I got as a result of querying their DNS server. And this is also the IPv6 of google.com that I get in response as well. Now, there's some flags you can use to get more information. There's, you can specify the type, and then you specify NS, and this just shows non-authoritative name servers. Yeah, and it shows you the name servers of google.com, ns2.google.com, ns4.google.com, ns3, ns1, and so on. Another thing you can also search is, let me see, is mail servers. So if you specify MX instead of NS like I did before, you can get the mail servers of google.com. Look up, type MX, google.com. And this will show you all the mail servers that we get as a response. So alt1 here, alt2, alt4, ASPMX. It also shows us the name servers as well in addition to that. Okay. Another one is host. It works similarly to google.com, so I'm not going to run it. And curl, which is typically used to retrieve files and works on many protocols. So if I do curl google.com, ideally it would give you the HTML of google.com, but it gives me a 301 instead as an HTML file. So it doesn't work on a lot of websites to just retrieve the HTML of their website. How did I open the browser? Oh, I just went to the top left and then clicked on a web browser. Yeah. So yeah, on other websites, they probably would give you the full HTML of that particular website, but Google's not letting us for some reason. Don't know why. Let's see here, wget. Wget is used to retrieve files over the internet. So let's say, for example, I wanted to retrieve a zip file from wordpress.org. I can do that. So I can type wget https wordpress.org/latest.zip, and this will retrieve the zip file on the WordPress servers. So that's what wget is typically used for. It's just retrieving files. Yeah. So when we check, yep, it downloaded it, latest.zip. And ping. This pings a specified host. So by default, ping will go on forever, and you're not going to want that. So to prevent that from happening, you want to specify the amount of pings. And the way that you do that is by putting -c and then the number of pings you want at the end. So if I wanted to ping google.com 5 times, I would use this command. So ping google.com-c 5, and it will ping google.com 5 times. Yep. Let's clear that. So text editors. This one's a little bit complicated. I know a lot of you like to avoid Vim as much as you can, but Vim is actually pretty cool once you actually get a little bit familiar with it. So let's try using Vim in myfile.txt. So if you type in vim myfile.txt, you would enter that environment. So let me show you that. Vim myfile.txt, and it will open Vim. Now, initially, you will notice that you can't type anything, because when you're, by default, you go into a mode that is accepting commands, and a lot of keys on your keyboard are assigned to a specific command. So if you want to start typing, you would type -I, and you can probably just navigate to where you want to start typing. Let's say if I wanted to type here, I'd put a bunch of W's, because now I'm in insert mode, and you can tell what mode you're in by looking at the bottom left. Now, if I want to exit the mode that I'm in, I can press escape, and then that takes me out. And if I want to save this particular document, I would do :W, W meaning right, and this would save it. Now, if I wanted to quit, I can do :Q, and that will take me out of that. Let's go back in. Now let's say I wanted to, let's say if I go into insert mode with I again, and I type some stuff here, and then I press escape to get out of insert mode, and I just wanted to exit without saving changes. So if I were to do :Q, it would yell at me. It would say no write since last change, add exclamation point to override. So if you wanted to force exit, you would just do :Q and then exclamation point, and that takes you right out of it. Here's some other stuff here, like set number. It shows the line numbers, and then :N goes to the particular line that you want to. So let's go back and show that real quick. Let me go vim myfile.txt. And let's say I wanted line numbers, because, you know, typical coding environments have line numbers. I would do :number, and that would show me, actually, that would show me the current number. Set number, it wasn't just number, my mistake. So :set number is what shows us the line numbers here. So it's a little bit nicer to look at. And let's say I wanted to just jump to a particular line. Let's say I wanted to just jump to line 20 instead of just pushing my arrow keys all the way down. I can just do :20, and I'm already there. So let's exit here, go back. And here's some other stuff you can do. So you can type GG to go to the beginning of the file. You can type G to go to the end of the file. You can type U to undo. You can do Control-C to redo. And you can type 0 to go to the end of a particular line, or you can do $ to go to the beginning of a line. Now keep in mind, this only works if you're not in any particular mode. So if you're in insert mode and you try to use a command, it's not gonna work. You're gonna want to make sure that there's nothing down here before you start using like those vim commands. So let's do GG, that goes to the beginning, G goes to the end, and what was the other one? 0 goes to the beginning of a line, and $ goes to the end of a line. What was the other one that I had here? Oh yeah, U undo, Control-C redo. So yeah, let's see. Let's exit out of here. Overwrite, yeah. Some other stuff you can do. There's another mode aside from insert mode. Oh, is the actual command switched? Hold up. Zero. Zero goes to the beginning. $sign goes to the end. That is switched. Let me edit that. All right. Yeah, I had them switch. Okay, so there's another mode aside from insert mode. There's a mode called visual mode, and that lets you highlight text and copy and paste text as well. So I will show that real quick. So make sure you have nothing on the bottom left here, because that tells you that you're not in any particular mode. And if you press V, you can go highlight some text. Like let's say you wanted to highlight this text and you wanted to copy it. You copy it with Y, and let's say you wanted to paste it here. You can type P and it pastes it into that line. So it's pretty handy when you're copying and pasting text in a terminal-only environment where you probably don't have access to a mouse. So let's exit. I'm not going to save that, so I'm just going to quit with an exclamation point. And there you go. Now, here's a simple text editor, a lot simpler than Vim, that's for sure. This one is called Nano. It's a basic text editor. So the way that you'd use it, you'd want to type nano and then specify the file that you want to open. And if there is no file by that name, it will just create a new one. So I will show you. Let's do nano myfile.txt. So the reason why people like using nano a lot is because it shows you all the commands in the bottom. I mean, all the shortcuts in the bottom. Vim doesn't really show you anything on the screen. So it could be intimidating for people who are not familiar with it. But Nano's easier. So let's say I wanted to type into this document just a bunch of S's for no particular reason. And I can save this file by doing Control-O, and then it's asking me for the file name to write, and then I just press enter if I don't want to change the file name, and that's it. So I can also exit with Control-X, and that would take me out. But let's say I modified some text, and then I exit. It will prompt me to save modified buffer, which means it's just asking if you want to save, and if you just type yes, it will let you, and then you specify the file name again. If you don't want to change it, just leave it alone, then you just press enter, and that's it. There's also some other commands like Alt-A, which marks the beginning of the data that you want to copy. And you can select the data with arrow keys and then press Alt-caret to copy the selection. And Control-U pastes the copied data. So I'll demonstrate that. Let's go to nano into this file. Let's say I want to copy this one. Actually, what was it? Alt-A? Oh, it was Alt-A. So it would be Alt-Shift-A, yeah. And then you just, let's say I want to highlight this text. Let's do, and then Alt-caret, which would actually be Alt-Shift-6. And then if I want to copy it somewhere, I can just copy here with Control-Shift-W. I think that copied it. Yeah, that did. It's just wrapping around. It's strange. But yeah, that does copy it. So let's say, yep, save, enter, and that's it. And there's some other stuff as well. Alt/, and Alt / and Alt / goes to the bottom or top of the file respectively. Alt-G specifies line and column that you want to jump to. And Control-W searches for text in the file. Note that it's capital. So that means you would actually be holding Shift in addition to G with Alt. So yeah, the case actually matters here. And Control-W searches for text, and Alt-R searches for text that you want to replace. Yeah. So let's go into process management. Process management here, you can type PS and it will show you the running processes on the system. So let's say, for example, you can also show all running processes on the system with the E flag by typing PS-E. And if you wanted to show the process of a particular ID, you can specify the ID with -P and then the number. So let me show you that. PS. So this doesn't really show me everything. It just shows me bash and PS. If I wanted to see everything on the system, I'm going to do PS-E. And it shows me every service that or process that is running on the system. And let's say I wanted a particular process, PS-P, let's say 983. It would show me that specific process ID and other information. Yeah. And in addition, you can also show all the processes running from a particular user. So if you specify PS-U and then the user, let's say, for example, Kali, it would show you all those processes running on the Kali user. This is useful in case there are multiple sessions running on a particular machine or if there are multiple users running on a machine. So it's like PS-U, Kali, and it will show you all the services that are and processes that are running on that user. Here's a nicer process viewer program called Top. It's pretty similar to a task manager. So let's say I wanted to type top and I just wanted to see processes sorted by CPU usage. I can do top-O %CPU. And there's also some shortcuts in addition to that. So D can change, like you can use that to change the amount of times that it refreshes. And then M allows you to display the memory usage. Let me show you that. So it was top-O, yeah. And then %CPU. So this shows you processes that are sorted by CPU usage. You can also sort by others like %memory or by process ID as well. So while you're in here, there's another shortcut that I mentioned. So D like changes the refresh rate essentially. So if I want to do like every second, it would refresh every second. If I want to do it, I think I can do it half of that as well. Yep. So it refreshes much more frequently. And M just shows you the memory usage of the system as well. So I'm not sure what units these are in. This might be megabytes. Yeah, these are megabytes. 33 megabytes, that's it? No, that's not right. That's too light? I'm not sure if that's correct, but it seems that it's telling me that it's using 33 megabytes, which is actually kind of strange. So yeah, to exit, you just type Q. There's also another command called kill. So if you type kill and then specify a particular process, you can just kill it that way. So let's say, for example, we run top in the background. By the way that you can run commands in the background is by typing the command and then typing the ampersand symbol at the end. So let's say I wanted to run top in the background as an example. Okay, so it's running in the background there. And if I type PS, I can see that top is running and I want that process ID. So if I wanted to kill top, I can do kill, specify the ID, and there you go. Well, actually, it's still running for some reason. That's strange. It should kill it. Maybe because I didn't run it as sudo? No, it's still running. Well, okay, whatever. Usually it would let you kill it. For some reason it's not, but that's what that command is for. And package manager. So I mentioned this earlier. APT stands for Advanced Package Tool, and it handles the software installation and removal. So APT update would update your lists of repositories. So the way that the package manager works is that it has a file called sources.list in the system, which is a bunch of links where it retrieves software from. So apt update just updates those sources, those repository sources, such that you can retrieve the latest software, because otherwise it would probably retrieve outdated software. apt update would not run by itself or requires elevated privileges, so you'd have to run sudo apt update. Now there's another command, apt upgrade. This upgrades the entire operating system. And this takes a very long time, so I don't recommend that you guys run it, at least not now. And apt install allows you to install software. So if you know the name of the particular software that you're looking for, then you would specify apt install and the name of the program. So chances are you probably wouldn't know the actual name that it's called in the sources. So usually when you're looking to install software, it would, on their website for that particular software, it would tell you the name of the program, such that if you run apt install, it would retrieve it. And now I'm going to demonstrate how you can set up a simple web server as the last thing that we're going to do here. So in your terminal environment, start an Apache web server. The way that you would do that is you would type sudo service apache2 start, and you can check if it's running with service apache2 status. And if you open Firefox and go to localhost, you'll see that that apache2 server is running. So I will demonstrate that real quick. So sudo service apache2 start. Okay, so we're not sure if it started. Let's say sudo, what was it? Service apache2 status. Yep. Service apache2 status. This will tell us if it's running. I see. Highlighted in green, very easy to see. Active, running. That's good. So exit that window with Q. And let's see the result of that output. For some reason it's frozen. Okay. It's fine. We run Firefox. So yeah, I guess for some reason I can't click on it. So I guess pressing the Windows key will pull that up anyway. And then typing Firefox lets you search for Firefox and you can open it here. So now that that Apache2 web server is running, Nginx all day, yeah. I could have used that as an example, but I just chose Apache2. I'm not partial to any of them. But yeah, if you go to localhost, you'd see that the Apache2 web server is running. This is just the default stuff. So we're going to replace this page with something, or like a simple PHP script. Let's go back here. So let's create a simple PHP file. So first you want to go to the web root, which is in the folder var www.html. That's where all the files that the Apache2 web server is running exactly for the actual web server. So we will go there, cd/var/www/html. Let's ls and see, yep, we have a file called index.html. I don't want that. What if I want to kill it? I can do just that. Ah, permission denied. I see, I see. If it says permission denied, just type sudo index.html. You can use any operating system. I mean, not operating system, any browser. You don't have to use Firefox, but Kali Linux comes with Firefox, so you'll just use that. You won't be able to see it on the host machine, though. You'll probably only be able to see it in the virtual environment. But yeah, so let me delete that index.html file with sudo rm-f index.html, and that will remove it. So yeah, now that that's gone, let's replace it with our own file. So using Vim or Nano, create an index.php file. and then type in this following command. I will show you that. Let's do nano, just to keep it simple, index.php. And let's type in this command. This is a simple PHP script. Hello world. Oh, almost forgot a semicolon. Let's save that with Control X. Save modified buffer, yep. Permission denied. That's a problem. So yeah, exit type no, because I just realized that it won't let me write into this folder without sudo permissions. So let's do that again. Sudo nano index.php. Let's type in our PHP script. Hello world. Semicolon. Control X to exit. Save modified buffer, yes. Enter. Now let's check if that's in there. Yep, that's in there. So now when we refresh localhost, we will see a hello world script running on our Apache 2 web server. So that's all that I have for you guys today. I hope you guys got a lot of value out of the various things that I've covered today. And I hope to see you guys around on the next InfoTech workshop that will be happening within the next several weeks. I don't remember the date, but you guys will get an update for sure. Yep, thank you for coming. And let me know if you guys have any questions as well.